On today's show, let's talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a Mavs Thunder crossover where we hear from Rylan Stiles about why this Thunder team is actually not as young and untested as everyone is saying that they are. We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
How about 10 Mavericks, NBA champions? Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen today, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform, leave a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let me know. Give me a question you have about the Oklahoma City Thunder in the comment section here. And yeah, go comment on Locked On Thunder. Go Mavs. Just go Mavs. Let's start simple. Let's start simple over there. Just go Mavs. Let's start simple. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with your friends for tournaments and unique trading cards, things like that. Cool playing pieces, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go. Go get it free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, bringing in Rylan Stiles from Locked On Thunder to talk about Mavs Thunder. Let's get into it with him now. All right, welcome in the Locked On Mavs, Locked On Thunder crossover. Nick Angstadt here, Rylan Stiles with me. And let's talk about the Derek Lively, Cason Wallace draft trade bowl that has now started between these two teams. I'm just going to start right off the bat. People are saying that the Thunder are not a tested team. They're the youngest team to ever make it in the second round. They haven't been tested. They only trailed for 33 minutes and 20 seconds in the Pelican series. What do you say about that this Thunder team is young and untested?
Yeah, I think that's kind of missing the mark a little bit whenever you consider the body of work that this team's been through. They've been a very healthy team, so they've experienced everything together through the 82 games. And I think it's unfair to preseason speculate that this is the best Western Conference we've ever seen. And then when a team goes and wins 57 games in the Western Conference, including some really tough, tight games, to say, actually, those games don't matter. But, the gritty Mavs that really went on a run after the deadline, those games matter a ton more. So this team has been through a lot together this season. And I think that it can get a little bit deceiving of the Pelicans sweep. They did sweep them, but those games, even the game 3 blowout and the game 4 where you got control of it late, like those games were tight. And the Thunder still have not had their fastball yet in these games, and they still were good enough to sweep. I think that the biggest testament to this young team is the ways that they can win. They can get you out and they can just dominate the game by splashing in threes and playing harassing defense, or they can win a game 94-92 in the playoffs and go ahead and go up in the series 1-0. So the ways that they can win and the different facets that they've been put into throughout the season, I think does matter. And I think that it's also a little tricky to talk about inexperience and youth, because typically young teams are terrible. Like they just don't even have a chance in the playoffs. They're not in the playoffs. And so we don't really have that big of a sample size of young teams who are this good and through 82 games with a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. So at that point, you've really got to treat this team independent of their birth certificate.
You mentioned that they didn't have their fastball in the first round series. I don't think they did. They obviously didn't need it. They only trailed for 33 out of 192 minutes. That stat was insane to me. I went back. They trailed for like 3 minutes in 2 of the games and they won. That's wild. Why didn't they have the fastball? Like what is the fastball that you say that they didn't have that they could have in this next round?
I think you look at game 1, especially in that series, 94-92 win. The Thunder held the Pelicans at 92 or fewer points every single game that series. The defense was electric in round 1. I think that the defense will travel against Dallas, but statistically, it'll obviously look different. You're not going to hold Luka and Kyrie to under 100 points ever, much less for 4 straight games.
Clippers just did it a couple times.
But that's right. But I think that it'll be very tough to do again for this next series. But I think that offensively, you saw the Thunder miss a lot of open threes that they typically hit. They're the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA. And in that game 1 especially, you saw multiple open threes missed. In game 4, when things were a little bit dicey and competitive before they grew a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left, Chet Holmgren missed an open 3. Cason Wallace missed an open 3. Wiggins missed 2 open threes. Those things typically go in for the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA. And so that can help the scoreboard and help the plus minuses look different if they just simply make their open shots, which we have a much larger sample size than 4 games of them hitting their open shots and being able to swell leads on the scoreboard.
You mentioned how healthy they were. That was something that diabolically all of us over here on Locked On Mavs used to try and push SGA's MVP candidacy down for sure. But that starting 5 played the most games together of any 5 in the NBA, 63 games. The next closest was 55. That distance to me is huge. And they played almost 800 minutes together. That was second in the NBA in like 5-man units that had played together. So do you look at that as a positive, or do you look at that as all right, well, what if one of these guys gets played off, or what if one of these guys is a bad matchup for them, and all of a sudden they have to play with different guys? Do you look at that as a positive, they've been all together, or do you look at that as something to be concerned about?
I look at it as a positive just because of the way that Mark has conducted this team this entire season. So they've been fully healthy, and that's been awesome, but they've also played 12 guys per game. So like everyone who is going to be live in this series has played a ton of minutes as well. It's not as though they stayed to a rigid 8-man rotation and relied on their starting 5 to get them from point A to point B. There's been many games where Josh Gady doesn't close. There's been many games where you want to play smaller and have Kendrick Williams at the 5 and not Chet Holmgren. There's been many games where Shai was not in the closing moments of like a game is tight entering the fourth quarter, and it's actually J-Dub who goes and sweeps the leg and gets a blowout win, and Shai never even returns in the fourth quarter. So the fact that they've already been playing 10, 11, 12 guys, you feel really confident in all of their abilities to impact this series, and they're all accustomed to entering the game and having different lineups thrown at them. So there's been stretches where Wiggins, for example, has had like 3 DNPs in a row, followed up by 3 games where he plays 20 minutes. And like, that's nothing due to health. That's everything due to the Thunder keeping their players on their toes. And that can be huge in the playoffs whenever you're going to have to make adjustments. And now you're already used to going in cold. You're used to the unpredictability of it. I think that's been a great job from the Thunder to prepare their guys for that. And so it would have worried me had the Thunder not already been playing a lot of guys and they just kind of all came in with relatively no experience.
Yeah, there's sort of like a niceness of being young and dumb in a sense that like, hey, we don't know any different. Like, I'll play, I'll come in, it's whatever. Like the pressure kind of rolls off your back at times. You saw that during the season, I feel like, where this Thunder team was like, hey, they took the moniker of Russell Westbrook, the why not, and they actually applied it to basketball instead of applying it to Mountain Dew commercials. And he was like, hey, why not us? Like, why not? Why can't we do this? Why can't we beat this team? Why can't we be the number 1 team in the West? And like, everything just seemed to like roll off their back, much like a dog, where they would. And this team has even taken that on as their like slogan, where they bark, where dogs
just bark.
Anything can happen.
Old ladies barking in the crowd,
and they'll bounce back, and the dog will love you every day. It doesn't matter.
I think that's been a big key for them too. Is their naiveness, and I think that will loom its head in this series, where it could not have worked out better for the Thunder to have only 1 consecutive off days stretch in this series between games 5 and 6, because they're going to lose games this series. Spoiler alert: they're not going to sweep the Mavericks, and they're going to have to handle that emotional gap of losing a game and having it all feel like it's kind of compounding on you through a long series. But you're not going to have the time off to overthink. Whereas in round 1, where there's so many off days, a young team can really get too in their head about a single loss. Right here, you just got to go play. Before you can even register what happened in game 1, you're playing game 2. Same thing for the whole series. So I think that helps the Thunder not spiral whenever they eventually do lose a playoff game.
What's the biggest reason OKC jumped 17 wins this year? Like you brought in Chet Holmgren. He played about 30 minutes. Cason Wallace, the former Mavs great, played 20 minutes a game. They weren't on the team last year. So you kind of replaced some of those like Jeremiah Robinson Earl minutes. You replaced some of that with these 2 new guys. But what's the biggest reason they made the jump?
Yeah, I think that defensively, Chet just unlocked so many different things. Of like last year, they did not have a single rim protector on the roster. Yeah. Jay Will was trying to fill that role as a charge merchant, if you will, but he could really only defend the rim on the ground. Whereas now you have a legit, not only a legit rim protector in the sense of
that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. That's the funniest way to say that my guy can't jump.
Yes, it was not a pretty sight to have that as the center.
Got no hops.
no, he was not going to go out there and soar. Although this year he's getting more blocks than he did last year. But not only does Chet just erase shots as like a highlight reel blocker, but he just outright deters them. Of like, you get into the lane, you see him there, you try to dish off a pass, it's fumbled away. everyone is so active and engaged defensively, which is rare through an 82-game season in the modern NBA. But getting the deflections, leading the league in deflections and loose balls and diving on the floor, like those things matter. And it starts at the head of the snake, too, of SGA taking another step defensively in terms of his level of engagement, on top of what you already have in Lu Dort, what you have in Jada, what you have in Chet back there to anchor the defense. And so I think that it's been a combination of Shai's gotten better, which every year he surprises us with how much better he can still get. He finished 5th in MVP voting last year and is much better as a playmaker and a defender this year than he was last year. J-Dub has just been ready for the moment. Like we mentioned, there's been many games where in the third quarter, the Thunder go on a run to come back, and now they're up by 2 or maybe down by 5, and you're thinking, all right, this is Shai's rotational pattern to sit on the bench, and for the next 4 minutes, what happens here? This can go either way for the Thunder, and J-Dub just goes in and ends the game in a positive way for OKC. Having that level of a score next to Shai has made all the difference in the world. And then you have Casey Wallace and Wiggins playing instead of Jeremiah Robinson-Earl and Poku, for example. So it's been all these things stacking on top of each other, all in one fluid motion, if you will, for the team building towards, hopefully, a title run.
Took us like almost 11 minutes for a Poku stray, like,
which is a new record.
Wasn't that long. Coming up, what's the matchup that OKC fears the most when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks? Talk about all that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause. We got to talk about Monopoly Go. Flag on the play. You already heard us talk about it, but there's just so much stuff going on in this game. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together and build up each other's boards. Rylan and I can work together, or I can go and smash his buildings because I'm mad that the Thunder win a game in this series. I can heist his vaults if we want to do that. We want to play Monopoly Go together. It feels new and exciting every day because there's constantly challenging tournaments, challenges, things like that. Ton of new unique mini games and things like that. There's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Just try it out. Download it on Google Play or the App Store. Download Monopoly Go. Again, there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on! Also want to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds that you can use to get in on the action. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You can go to the NBA tab right here. Game 1, Mavs, Thunder. Thunder, 3.5 point favorite in that one. So they get the slight edge. You usually get like 3 points for being at home. And so they get like a half point for that first game. So that's pretty interesting. And then if you want to go over to the series odds, Thunder are -120, Mavs -102, which is like very, very close. This is like Thunder are like a little bit more of a favorite than the Mavericks in this for the series. So really interesting stuff on FanDuel. Go check it out, FanDuel.com, and make every moment make every playoff shot count. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
My first shot, my first make.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, Locked On Thunder crossover edition. Being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad. If you listen every day on Locked On Mavs, do you have a name for the Thunder buddies?
Yeah, we don't have a name yet, but maybe we should come up with one because I do like seeing the Raccoon Squad flood the comments right now.
Oh man, they're still going at Darian Vaziri of Locked On Thunder, and I think they're probably still going at Cyrus Satsas of Locked On Warriors from 3 years ago. So.
And Brennan Clean of Locked On.
Oh my God,
for sure.
Brennan can't get away from him. Brennan can't get away from him. So shout out to everybody that's already on Locked On Thunder. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder for all the playoff coverage. If you want to hear more about the Thunder, Rylan knows more about them than probably anybody except for maybe Mark Dagnall. I think I'll put Coach ahead of you, and then it's
that's fair.
What's the matchup that OKC is most concerned about when you look across the board? You go, all right, this is the Mavs team. This is our Thunder team. What's the matchup where you go, ooh, man, I'm really worried about that?
I think the biggest thing is just the star power of Luka and Kyrie in the pick and roll specifically, because I think that the complementary pieces around those two guys are going to have to be just spoon-fed buckets, either from the attention you give them and you kick out to the corner threes and then you have a good three-point shooting night, or most importantly, where I think that the Mavs can thrive is in the pick and roll. Those two guys are elite in the pick and roll, 93rd percentile for Luka, 84th percentile for Kyrie. And what makes them so difficult is it puts any center, even Chet Holmgren or whoever else, in a tough position because you're naturally wanting to shade toward the ball handler and give them the attention that they deserve coming off the screen, which puts you a step slow and out of position against a solid rolling option in Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, who of course can take advantage of that. So their ability to just abuse the pick and roll with really a pick your poison style of either you're going to have Lou Dort or whoever fight through a good screen and try their best to make a difficult shot for Luka and Kyrie, which they're both capable of hitting difficult shots, or give them more attention and thus give up an easy 2 points for Gafford or Lively and just hope that maybe a couple times in there that Chet can use his length and timing to get a block from behind, which he's capable of doing. So the pick and roll aspect of it, I think, is the biggest threat to OKC, because everything else, every other complementary piece than those two stars, they're going to have to just, it's going to take some variance, if you will, of just PJ Washington. He can't generate his own shot. He can only really knock it down from the corner when he's open, if that. So I think that you're really worried about that pick and roll.
Damn, PJ can. This man may be able to shoot. I don't think he can, but he may be able to shoot. He can get a little floater too. He attacks closeouts and goes to the rim and hits a little floater here or there. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you on this. This is going to be the stars, how the four stars match up, and if Luka and Kyrie outplay SGA and Jalen Williams, I think it could be really hard for the Thunder to figure out ways to win games. I think that they'll have to get at least one of those guys to outplay one of Luka and Kyrie. And Luka coming into this, he's got the knee that's been bothering him forever, and it goes in and out and things like that. The knee doesn't go in and out, but the pain and all that goes in and out. And it's changed the way that he plays a little bit. He can't get to the basket as quickly as he was. And so one of the things that I've talked about between the difference between Luka and SGA is that when Luka has the ball and he's coming off a screen or he's doing something or whatever, he's just driving with the ball, he's got literally every option in front of him. There's like very few players in the NBA that can do this, where you've got every pass. And then he can drive, he can pull mid-range, he can do fadeaway, he can post, he can step back three, all that. SGA has every single option in front of him, except for there's some passes he can't make that Luka can. That's not even a knock on SGA. It's literally just Luka and Jokic, and maybe that's it, are just able to make passes that some guys just literally cannot. And right now, Luka can't make the kind of drives, and usually can't make the kind of drives that SGA can make. And so I think that's a real difference between the two stars that I think is going to be interesting. Can the Mavericks contain or at least limit SGA in a way on his drives? And can the Thunder limit Luka on these passes to like you said, spoon feed some of these role players around him? The matchup that I'm really interested in is the Mavs centers, because you got this Maxi Kleber injury. He's going to be out for the whole series. That was a real that really hurts the Mavericks, because it takes away some of your versatility, takes away a shooter that had been good in the first round. The Mavericks are lacking shooters right now. Takes away a really, really positive defender. He has been really great the last couple of months. Don't listen to Mavs fans. He has been very great the last couple of months. They were really down on him for a while, but as a defender, he's been amazing. And so now I look at the matchup of Gafford and Lively versus Chet, and I'm just really fascinated to see if Chet can match the production of those two guys. Then that's really bad for the Mavericks.
Yeah, I think that he'll be able to do that in the sense of just as a talented player being defended by them. My question would be in that category, how will the Mavericks defend Josh Giddey? Because I go back to the regular season is very tough, because the regular season does not matter at all between these two teams. They played 4 times and none of it means anything. But one thing that they did do not even
the February one where the Mavs dominated that game. That one doesn't.
Right. That game, Mavs fans are going to love, but I don't think that any reasonable Mavs fan thinks that they're 35 points better than OKC.
I don't know. It's the only one where everybody was pretty much healthy. Lively didn't even play that game, so maybe they're. Yeah,
Lively didn't play that game, but I think that when you look at one of these games, it was the third of the 4, and Josh Giddey actually plays a really good first half for the Thunder. Yeah. He was an impact player. But still, the best option for Jason Kidd and the big adjustment he made was in the second half. He just parks the center in the restricted area and leaves Josh Giddey alone, which even though Josh played really well in the first half, it's unfair to him to make him this corner shooter from 3. And so that clogs the lane, that hurts the Thunder's drive and cut abilities. And so you will then go to Wiggins, go to Wallace in his spot. And at that point, whenever you then get the Mavericks to start defending Chet with a big, how do they hold up against Chet, who can dominate you as a screener, both as a pop and a roller, who can dominate catch and shoot threes, who can step into them as a trailer if you're not picking him up high enough in transition, or even off of made baskets as the inbounder, and who can put the ball on the deck and just pull off this spin move Dirk fade that everyone in Oklahoma City loves and will be reminiscent for Mavs fans to see throughout this series. I don't think that either one of them can defend Chet on the perimeter. On the other hand, though, how many of those easy buckets and lobs do they get from those pick and rolls that the Mavericks should lean into a lot?
The center matchup is going to be really interesting. It's the 4 stars matchup, and then it's the center matchup. I feel like that is a really big thing. And you touched on Josh Giddy. So coming up, I want to talk about Josh Giddy, his role in all this, because I think he could be one of those swing players that really changes how this series really looks. And so coming up, let's talk about Josh Giddy and his role in all this. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. You got Mother's Day coming up. Like it's in a week. Like you're running out of time right now. And so go check out DoorDash and see what you got, see what's available for you right now. You can go and it's not just meals anymore. You don't have to just go get like a burrito sent to your mom. You can get flowers, you can get chocolates, you can get stuff from retail stores, all kinds of stuff if you want to get. My mom doesn't live in the city that I live in, and so I am probably going to use DoorDash to go get something for her for Mother's Day. So whatever she likes, whatever she wants, you can go and get that for her at a store using DoorDash. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order. Now with DoorDash, use that code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Using the code on DoorDash. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Again, check it out. DoorDash. Use that code LOCKEDONNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Rylan, we're talking about some of the matchups in this series. We're talking about what the Thunder have looked like. And you mentioned Josh Giddy. One of my questions about Josh Giddy was, in their matchups before, Dallas just, like you said, they either stuck a center on him and just let him alone in the corner. But in the matchup in February, that where pretty much everybody was healthy, they just put Luka on him to start the game. And Luka just like left him. And then Luka was able to be a help defender and kind of roam around. And he's led the Mavericks in deflections this year. He's just a smart, guy on defense to be able to find those seams and things like that. Since Josh Giddy is not playing in New Orleans in this series, will Josh Giddy become a problem, or how do you envision that playing out for the Mavs and for OKC?
This is the total glass half full, glass half empty conversation with Josh Giddy of he's been a playoff riser to this point. Every playoff game's been against the New Orleans Pelicans. Even last year's play-in tournament, whenever he went in New Orleans and scored 31 points, it was also New Orleans. So technically speaking, he's been very good in the postseason. Also, every postseason games came against the Pelicans, and you're not playing the Pelicans anymore. I think that there's no debating. He's admitted as such that the lowest point of his basketball life was that afternoon in Dallas. And conveniently enough, another Saturday afternoon in Dallas is on deck this week. But that low point also serves as a turning point for Josh, because he got into a little bit of a rhythm against Sacramento and got to the All-Star break, limped his way there. After March 1, he's put up 15 points, 6 boards, 7 boards, 6 assists a game, 1.1 stocks a game if you're into the stocks aspect of things, and shot the ball extremely well. I mean, he shot the ball over 50% from the floor. He shot like 37% from 3, a career high 69% at the rim, which has been the biggest swing for him. It's been a very nice trip for Josh in the lane as a 6'8", arguably 6'9" guard, as he claims he is. That's been the biggest swing, is that he can finish inside now. We have to respect him a little bit more and let him play on the ball more. But at the same time, if you give him so much space, there's only so much you can do if you're just driving straight into the teeth of a center. So the Thunder's ability to play Josh, I think, is severely in question, because we mentioned that game on TNT where that was Kidd's big adjustment, was just to leave him alone to the center. You mentioned on that Saturday game, whenever it was Luka, the Thunder, I think, leaning into a more 5-out offense and bringing Josh to the ball if Luka's on him, and getting a switch between him and Shai, while Luka is a better defender than he gets credit for, and it was more engaged defensively in that Clippers series and this season than we've seen before. We also saw in that Clippers series that a couple fouls on Luka, and he has no choice but to stop playing defense. And it's no disservice to Luka, but he's so valuable offensively that you'd rather give up James Harden floaters after James Harden floaters to keep him in the basketball game versus him picking up some more fouls. And so Shai can really take advantage of that as another guy who crafts his way to the line. And so I think that if they put Luka on Giddy, that's a much better aspect and avenue for the Thunder, keeping him on the floor, than if they put a center on him in the lane.
Crafts his way to a line is a good way to say that his whistle is wild.
It's a wet whistle.
Did I just make everybody in Oklahoma City mad?
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Luka gets a whistle too. Okay. I'm really I'm really interested in the transition offense of the Thunder. The Thunder, according to Synergy, spent the most time in transition, over 20% of their offense in transition. That was number one. Cleaning the Glass does the numbers a little differently, and they were 16%. And in the Pelican series, they spent 14%, 16%, 19%, and 17% in transition over those 4 games. And so I'm curious if some of that dries up. If they don't get some of those easy buckets in transition, it's kind of the same for the Mavs too now with this new team. But what happens when that dries up, do you think?
Well, they're still one of the best half-court offenses as well. They just dominate in transition throughout this season. I think that part of the difference between Synergies and Cleaning the Glass is that the Thunder, unlike most teams, even in a blowout, will still enjoy getting steals and easy buckets. Like, they never quit trying for those easy buckets.
We remember the last game of the season.
That was...
we're very aware of how that game went.
If there's still time on the clock, they're still going to rock. So I think that that's been really good for the Thunder to gain experience through all 48 minutes of all 82 games. But half court wise, like, they're still really, really, really good. And I think that it can look differently, of course, because as you get deeper in the playoffs, you're going to see teams stop turning the ball over, stop being so careless. And especially when you have 2 guys who are built for this moment. Luka is undoubtedly built for the playoffs and built to steal your heart out at the end of games. Kyrie Irving is no stranger to big moments, including in the NBA Finals. So, like, I trust those 2 guys with my life at the end of games. And so as the turnovers stop and the transition stops, I think where the Thunder can still benefit, though, is the deflections. I don't think will go away. And maybe it doesn't result in raw turnovers and raw fast break points. But if you get 2 deflections in a possession and now you're throwing up a grenade shot with like 0.2 seconds left, that's the best you can hope for against teams like the Mavericks who have such great star power. And the Mavericks will make some of those shots, obviously, but you'd much prefer that than just letting Luka go to work. So I think that maybe it looks differently, but still the roots of transition still plays for OKC.
Yeah, it's been a weird thing where the Mavericks have really tried to play a little faster this year, and it's helped them a lot in a lot of key areas. But in the last 3 games against the Clippers, they really found something offensively. All their transition possessions went down, like completely went down. In game 6, they only had 9% of their plays in transition. The Mavericks have historically been a team that just is last in transition all the time. And so they've learned how to play it. Luka has learned how to play in the half court and all that. And so I'm curious if that angle of it, if the Thunder don't get the same kind of transition possessions, what happens to them? We know what will happen if the Mavericks don't get it. They don't rely on it. They try to get it to make it easier for them, but we know what can happen if they don't get it. Answer these 2 or finish these 2 statements. The Thunder win this series if
the Thunder win this series if none of the role players for the Mavericks go off. If you just have Luka and Kyrie dominate this game, I think that the Thunder have enough play finishers and enough from their 2 leading co-stars to get it done.
The Thunder lose this series if
Thunder will lose this series if Chet Holmgren does not dominate offensively. Like, if he is not shooting open threes, if he's not going 3 for 6 from 3, I think that then you lose the battle of the bigs, because we know for a fact that those 2 bigs and Gafford and Lively will just have easy points, and that takes away your 3rd best scoring option if he's not hitting from 3. So I think that Chet has to be hitting from 3 in this series.
The Mavs have struggled with shooting centers. They had a real hard time with Miles Turner when they played the Pacers. They had a hard time with Jokic, obviously, but they have a hard time with these centers that can shoot. And so I'm really fascinated to see if Dagnall tries to like pull him out of the paint a little more and like make him a spot up shooter a little more, because the Mavericks their defense has been great the last couple of months. And in the Clipper series, they had some really great games too. And it relies on those centers being in those spots to help everybody else. Now, guys can stay in front of their man. PJ Washington has been a great defender. Derek Jones Jr. has been a great defender. You mentioned Luka had played really great defense. Kyrie has too, but those centers really help a lot of that stuff and finish plays by getting rebounds and things like that. And so these center matchups, I think, are really, really interesting for this series. And I think that with Maxey out, it's going to be a 48 minutes of Mavs centers, Mavs 7-footers out there, right? Jason Kidd said it's next man up, and he mentioned Markieff Morris's name, and I was like, man, like, I don't think that's where you want to go, but as we know,
I don't always tell you guys the truth.
So we'll see.
For Mavs fans' sake, I hope that he was lying about Markieff Morris and Dwight Powell being the answer.
He just likes to name that. He likes to name every name. When someone asks him, like, "Oh, who could do this?" He's like, "I will name every player, or else someone will get mad at me."
Yeah, that's a former player right there. That's the value of it. He knows what it's like in the locker room whenever the head coach doesn't vouch for you.
Last question, quickly that I didn't get to earlier. How was Chet so effective against Jonas Valanciunas? Because that was a key thing, I think, in the Pelican series.
I think that with Jonas, you look at now a huge sample size of like the regular season games and now the postseason games where go ahead. And the best example quickly is in game number 2 where the Thunder won in a blowout. Jonas ripped off 11 straight points. That's very cool that you ripped off 11 straight points. The Thunder scored 12 in that same stint before the first time out because sure, you can take your time, dump it inside to your big man and let him barrelist chest into Chet and see if you can score at the rim with enough touch as Chet's still going to go and contest the shot. But you know who's not getting shot attempts at that point? CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, even Trey Murphy III from way downtown and generating threes. So go ahead and do that. And a few times Chet's going to block you. A few times your big bumbling big man's going to miss. And then other times you're going to score 2. And guess what? If it gets into a matchup of tough 2s versus tough 2s, the Thunder have number 2 who's going to make a living and has made a living in his career of hitting tough mid-range 2s and helping you keep pace offensively. So I think that people look at that and their eyes get wide of, oh my goodness, just go through Chet's chest. Okay, he's still going to block you a few times. And I'd much rather you just go to Gafford and Lively than have Luka hit step back 3 after step back 3 and take over a game.
The problem is what happens when the point guard is the one going through the center's chest and the one going right at the rim and finishing. Like that, I think is going to be interesting. Bringing, in that pick and roll stuff that you talked about earlier. Like what happens if Chet gets switched onto Luka? You think they'll give up that matchup of Chet guarding Luka?
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see where Mark wants to go with it. I think you can make a very strong argument, as we're going to get into in my show, of just leave Luka and Lou there. Like Luka's crown Lou as a top 3 defender in this league. You can't get much better than that. And no matter who you put on him, God himself, Luka would knock down very difficult shots. So just let those 2 play. Don't switch anything. Don't overhelp. Don't overcorrect, because where the Thunder fall into a trap is when Luka hits the paint, guys collapse and they try to stop Luka. Well, then that leaves the spray out ability to PJ Washington. And sure, sometimes he'll miss, but what if he's hitting that night? Then you've really compounded the problem for no real benefit because there's no such thing as stopping Luka. There's no such thing as stopping Kyrie. So I wonder if you just let those 2 guys dominate and just stay tight on PJ, stay tight on Lively, stay tight on Gafford, stay tight on all these other guys, and just say, name your score for Doncic and Irving. Let's see if we can outscore those 2 guys.
It's going to be a really fascinating matchup. This matchup of 2 elite podcasters will continue on with our other episode. We're going to do the question about the Mavericks in the next one. So go check out wherever you're listening or watching this. There will be another episode in your feed tomorrow. So go check out that and continue to subscribe to Locked On Mavs and Locked On Thunder all throughout the postseason as we do this series. There you go. Hope you enjoyed the crossover. We got another episode with it coming tomorrow. I'll also do an episode with Reggie Atatula tomorrow talking about this series. So there you go. Enjoy it. Locked On Mavs. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.